Thank you for joining me for another video. So last week we opened up Genesis chapter 2, got into a little bit of the meat of it. There happens to be a lot going on in chapter 2, so I'm going to break it up. I wanted to do this week, finish everything up, but that didn't work. So what I've got for you this week is just two topics, just two very quick topics. I say very quick. It's not very quick, haha. But we are going to be reading Genesis chapter 2, verses 9 through 14. So let's go ahead and hop into that. ويسمح الشام إلهيم من هادما كل عز نحمال لمرء والطيف لما أخال can't read today لما أخال وعيس حيين بثوخ حقان وعيس حذاث طوف والرأس. So it says that Hashem God caused to sprout from the ground every tree that was pleasant to look at and good for eating, and the tree of life was in the garden, and the tree of good and bad knowledge. ونهر يسمى غيدن لهشقوث إثهجان a river went forth out of Eden to water the garden. ومشام يبرد وهيا لأربعة رشيم, and from there it split. It became four headwaters, four river sources. I don't know how you say that. Headwaters, I guess, is what we're going to say. שם האחד פישון הוא הסובב את כל ארץ החבילה אשר שם הזהב. The name of the one was Pishon. This one, it says, encircled, it went around all the land of Hawilah where there is gold. Uzahav ha'aretz hahi tov, and the gold there is good. Sham habedulah wa even hashoham, and the bedulah in the shoham stone. Now most translations that I've seen will translate bedulah as bedelium. I have no idea what that is. I think it's a crystal, but I have no clue what it is. I'm just going to be open and honest about that. I'm not really sure about it. When it comes to the names of specific rocks and everything, especially semi-precious stones and or precious stones, in biblical Hebrew, I'm just as nebulous as everybody else. If anybody tells you they know for sure, question them, because most of us really don't know. And the even the shoham, the shoham stone, excuse me. Most translations I've seen translate that as onyx. I think I've seen one that translates it as marble. It just kind of, I guess, depends again on what their sources are for what exactly each stone is. But we do know that these are very likely to be either precious or semi-precious stones. Probably not diamonds, probably not rubies, probably something a little bit, a step down from a precious stone. You wouldn't put this in jewelry, okay? But you might put it in, say, a house, like marble flooring or something like that, right? Now, I have seen one translation, I forget which one it was, that translated Even HaShoham as, rather than marble or onyx, translates it as lapis lazuli, and if that's the case, if it is lapis lazuli, that only comes from exactly one place in the world, which I think is really strange. but that would be the country of what is now Afghanistan. Let's jump right back into it. Washem al-Nahar Sheni, the name of the second river, Gihon, was Gihon. Hu hasovev et kol eretz Kush, and this went around the entire land of Kush. I'll get into that here in just a minute. Washem al-Nahar Hashlishi, the name of the third river was Chidikel, the Tigris. Hu haholech Pedamat Ashur, and it went along the eastern side of Ashur, of Assyria. Wahanahar Hariva'i, the fourth river, Hu Farath. This was the Parath. This was the Euphrates, right? So we know roughly where it is because we know where the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers are, right? So there's really a lot that I could get into in just these verses. It doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot there, but there is. I'm going to spare you for the sake of time, and also because there's some stuff in here that's not really meant for beginners. So putting it out there would be like giving someone chemotherapy when really they just need an aspirin. I mean, it's too much, and can actually be harmful to put out too much information. So we're going to go with a very basic understanding of everything. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is, so there are two specific trees that are mentioned as being in the garden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge, right? Some people think that it's the same tree, that the tree of life is identified with the tree of knowledge. I disagree. Most commentators disagree. It seems reasonable to assume that these are two distinct trees. Also, in this little section that I just read, it tells us where the Garden of Eden was. So I'm not going to get into the tree of knowledge this week, and I'm not going to get into it next week either, because next week I'm dedicating just to Eve's creation, and anything else that I happen to see in what we're going to read next week that I happen to think is just really cool. We will, however, get into the tree of knowledge when we talk about chapter 3, where it becomes more relevant, right? So this week we're going to talk about the tree of life. So what is the tree of life? What makes the tree of life? What kind of plant? That's how I should say it. What sort of plant are we talking about when it's something that could be called the tree of life, right? So you would expect it, first of all, to be edible, right? And that is very clearly laid out in chapter 3, after the expulsion from the garden. We are told in the Torah that the reason that we're expelled, or that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, was to prevent them from eating from the tree of life. Okay, so we know that it's edible. We know that other things that the ancients would have considered to be a tree of life would be things like medicinal properties. Does it have medicinal properties? Can it cure diseases? Can it cure a headache? That sort of a thing. Does it relieve pain? Does it relieve inflammation? That sort of thing. Other things we might consider would be, can it be used for other areas of life beyond food and medicine? Things like clothing. Can you make clothes out of it? Can you make like cotton or hemp or flax? Can you make clothing from it? Can you make blankets from it? We might expect that. We also might expect it to be able to be used as a construction material. After all, houses are made frequently out of wood in some parts of the world. Not in Florida, In Florida, they're made out of cinder block because we have hurricanes here, and those never end well. Unless you happen to live in Orlando, in which case, sometimes they're not so great. Most of the time, it's just kind of, oh look, rain again. Another thing that we might expect a tree of life to, another use for it would be religious rites. Can it be, does it smell good like cinnamon? Could it be used for perhaps incense, or perhaps for some sort of religious rituals? Like I'm only saying this because it's the first thing that pops into my mind, right? Like peyote or ayahuasca, things like that. Can it be used that way? If so, then it may have had religious significance. Also, we're talking about a plant that's big enough to be considered a tree. So we're not talking about a tomato bush. Personally, I'm not a big fan of tomatoes, but I can't rightfully say that they were the forbidden fruit, because it's really not big enough to be considered a tree, right? All of that being said, there's only one plant that I could think of that was grown in the area at the time of Adam and Eve that is actually native to the region that I can reasonably say that makes a very good candidate for the tree of life, and we know that it was cultivated at that time, would be the cannabis plant. Okay, go ahead and laugh. Just remember back to my video about substance use and or abuse. Okay, cannabis can be used as medicine. I think we all know that. I think that the recent rediscovery of medicinal cannabis is doing a very good job of just showing that yes, it can be used for medicinal purposes if you're using it properly. Also, it can be used for food. You can actually eat the seeds. You can eat other parts of the plant as well, the leaves, the stems. You can actually eat it all. The entire thing is edible, and I think that's kind of cool. And we know that people frequently did back then, which might explain the talking snake in chapter 3. But we'll get to that when we get to that. And that was a joke. It's not. I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm just going to, say this, and then we'll get into it when we get into it. It wasn't a snake. Okay. Now that I've said that, let's move on. Everyone that's watching this is just like, what does he mean it wasn't a snake? It wasn't a snake. I'll get into that when we get into it. So tune back in, not next week, but the week after, perhaps. Whenever we get to it, we'll get to it. Right, so cannabis can be used for medicine. It can be used for food. It can be used to make clothing, right? Hemp clothes were the norm in the majority of civilized world before the 20th century. Things in the United States kind of took a turn for the worse when the cannabis industry was actually outlawed a little less than 100 years ago. It basically put an end to things like hemp paper, which, by the way, the U.S. Declaration of Independence is written on hemp. George Washington grew hemp. It was used for everything. Why? Because it's basically a tree of life. I wonder if that's connected to the reading this week. It can be used for construction material. You can actually use it to make bricks. You could use it to make insulation for homes. This is counterintuitive, but the parts that can be used for construction are actually flame retardant. So it resists being set on fire, right? So that's the sort of plant that you would want. Additionally, there is a long history of using it in religious purposes, right? So let me take a quick peek at my notes here. So in Genesis Exodus chapter 30, verses 20 through 25, 22 through 25, you're going to see the recipe for the holy anointing oil, right? So we used it in the old days to anoint everything in the Mishkan, that's the tabernacle, and we used it to anoint our Kohanim, right? These are the priestly family. These are the descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, the male descendants of Aaron. Later on in time, it would be used, although it may have been a different oil, but we're led to believe that it may have been used to anoint kings Saul, David, and Solomon. And at other points in time where there was a doubt as to who the heir was, which was certainly the case with Solomon, then there's our religious use for it, because the cannabis plant is actually one of the, according to some authorities, according to some experts, the cannabis plant is actually one of the ingredients you're going to see in verse 23. There's a plant in the Hebrew, it's called Panei Bosem, which is like a fragrant cane, right? Like a reedy plant that produces a very fragrant aroma, right? And let's just be honest about this, okay? We're grown-ups. Most of us that are watching this, we're grown-ups, right? Cannabis is very fragrant, okay? Doesn't matter what you think about that smell, it is very fragrant. If Panei Bosem is identifiable with cannabis, that may explain why the Torah specifically says it may not be misused. It can only be used in certain circumstances. And no ordinary person, like myself, for example, could be anointed with it. Why? Well, because it probably had the potential to get you a little bit happy, right? We'll say that. Okay, now I'm not talking about getting high or anything like that. This is strictly religious use, right? This is not recreational use, although that certainly was a thing back in the day, and even to this day in certain parts of the world. Obviously, I'm not giving you permission to use it, to use cannabis for any purposes, unless it's legal where you live, and then, just follow the law. Just don't be stupid with it. Use things appropriately. Last thing I want to hear about is someone was under the influence and driving after watching this video, and they, hurt themselves or someone else. That's the last thing I want to hear about. Okay, so be responsible, be reasonable human adults. I am way off topic now. I forgot where we were going. Oh yeah, so that, in my opinion, is the tree of life. It very quite literally was a tree of life. It had everything for every part of life that you could possibly want, right? You could even use it to feed the animals if you wanted, domesticated animals. And just as an added bonus, I mentioned earlier that it has to grow big enough to where we could reasonably say that it's a tree. Well, guess what? They grow something like 5 meters tall, right? That's a little bit more than 15 feet. So it's pretty high. That's pretty, and I don't mean that in the sense of cannabis high. I mean it in the sense of that's pretty tall for what we typically think of as just a regular plant, right? And it doesn't take that long for it to get that tall. That being said, we're going to move on from that, and we're going to move on to the last thing that I wanted to talk about in this video, which is the location of the Garden of Eden. Okay? Was the garden real? Did it, did it actually exist? Did it, where is it now? Is it possible that perhaps God took it back? Maybe it's in a different dimension. Maybe God took it to heaven, waiting for the Messianic era. I don't know, what other things people might say about it, but I've heard those things. Usually I hear them from Christians. But even they will admit that, because Jews, we don't really care that much where the garden was. We're more concerned about what's going on now. Um, but although there are some of us who, just think that it's really cool. Um, but even the Christians that I've heard it from, things like, oh, it's in a different dimension, God took it up to heaven, that sort of thing. Um, Usually they're very quick to admit the only reason they suspect that is because where is it? There's nowhere in the world that they could think of that it could be, where we're seeing it now. And let's be honest, if humans live there, it's going to be more urban now or suburban. Um, you know, we would have destroyed some of the natural beauty of it, right? And I believe that's certainly the case. So even the Christians who suspect that maybe God took it to a different dimension, took it to heaven, whatever the case may be, even they're very quick to say, nah, it's really kind of shaky. I don't actually have any evidence of that other than where is it, right? So short answer is yes, I do believe that it is still very much here. I do believe that it very much was a real place. And I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit. So Hawilah is one of the regions in Western Asia, right? Very near, let's say, the where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are. Okay, the land of Cush. So there are actually two regions of the world that are called Cush, right? So everyone knows about Ethiopia. Well, maybe not everyone. Biblical scholars and historians and people who just think it's cool and study that sort of thing, like myself, will immediately identify Cush with Ethiopia, right? What we now call Ethiopia. There was another region, and this one makes more sense, that is still called Cush to this day. We just don't hear about it a lot. And if I can get away with saying this, I need for you to think back to those misguided days of your youth when cannabis use was all recreational. Maybe it was 10 minutes ago for you. I don't know. You do you. I'm not here to judge you. Okay, it's God's job. What's another name for cannabis? A slang term for cannabis? Kush. Why? Because it comes from the Kush region of the world. Okay, so we're talking in Asia, right? Hindu Kush. We're talking the region of, let's say, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Azerbaijan, Iraq. This whole region makes a whole lot more sense than Africa, because if this river leaves Eden and goes into the garden and then becomes four headwaters, it's quite unreasonable to say that the same headwaters, or that the headwaters of the Euphrates are, in Ethiopia. Otherwise, you could say that there's just this massive region that was the garden, and that's clearly not the case, because the text tells us the garden was in the east of a region called Eden, Eden in Hebrew, which actually comes from the Sumerian term Eden, which means a plain or a step, right? So we're looking for a high step, not high cannabis, although we are talking about Kush a little bit. And that's going to get me banned from YouTube. Just kidding. It probably won't, because none of you are going to report it. And because I've seen far worse. The Tigris and Euphrates, right? Everybody knows where they are. They're in modern-day Iraq. They're also parts of them go into the surrounding region in the north. This is the broader area of the Redin, what would have been called Redin to the Sumerians, and Israel we inherited as the word Redin, right? So there are two hypotheses about where the garden is or was. One is, and I'm just going to tell them both to you, I'm going to tell you which one I think, and then I'm actually going to share a link with you to show you a little bit more about why I think it is that way. So the first hypothesis for where the garden was located is down in the southern part of modern-day Iraq, right, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers are close to each other. This is going to be like at the head of the Persian Gulf, right? The problem with that is the other two rivers aren't there. The proponents of that position say that they're dried up now, and that's reasonable, but they're lacking one part of the puzzle that would steer them far away from that. That is a coastal plain. That is a region that is so low it cannot be Aden. It cannot be a high step plain region, right? So what we need to do for that is go to the other location, other proposed location, I should say, which is in modern day Iran, specifically in the province of West Azerbaijan, west or east? East Azerbaijan? I can't remember between the two. Probably east, near the city of Tabriz in Iran. That has all the hallmarks of the biblical description of the Garden of Eden. Okay, and I'm not going to get into why I think that, because frankly, it's not that big of a deal to me to get into it, but also I'm not the first one to come up with it. Somebody else came up with it, and this individual's research is actually, I think it's brilliant, and I've read a lot of his stuff. I've seen a video that I'm going to share. I'm going to share the link for the video in the description on this video. It's a video called In Search of Eden, and it is by David Rohl. Now, David Rohl is a world-class Egyptologist, right? Now you might think, well, what's an Egyptologist doing looking for the Garden of Eden? Well, that's not important. He'll explain that in the video. I mean, it is important to him, just not to this video. And he's actually been there, and he walks you through the process in this video. By the way, he has several books out. I have several of them. I believe he just published one not too long ago that I need to get. But if you get a chance, go on Amazon, go on Google, just look for David Rohl. His books should come up. I highly recommend A Test of Time. That is absolutely brilliant work. And I also recommend Eden to Exile, which is absolutely brilliant work. These are what they're called in the US. I understand that they were probably published under different names in other countries. So, maybe do a little bit of research on which one is which. I believe A Test of Time is just A Test of Time, right? And it's in 2 or 3 parts. I can't remember how many. But all of it is good. All of it is really insightful. That being said, I'm done. This was actually a short video today, and I'm okay with that. David Rohl is the author / Egyptologist / all-around fantastic guy. I actually had the privilege of sitting in on a webinar that he was teaching, actually with one of the rabbis that I study under, and he was an absolutely phenomenal teacher. He himself, I believe, is agnostic, but he's very obviously, to me anyway, raised Christian, and he approaches things from that perspective. And I highly value that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So David Roll, I'm going to put in the description for this video the link to his video, In Search of Eden, and if you enjoy my videos, you will not be disappointed by that video. You won't be disappointed by any books that he's published. The man's an absolute rock star, right? So that being said, I'm done. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, share. Sharing is caring. Share this video, share this channel with people who may be interested in this sort of thing. If you have not already subscribed, how dare you? You've stolen my childhood. No. I'm not going to make fun of Greta Thunberg. I'm not going to do it. I want to, but I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to do it as soon as I turn this video off. I promise you. If you have not subscribed yet, absolutely do that. If you enjoy this content that I'm putting out. Hopefully I'm going to be able to get a little bit more out. My wife is still not in labor. If you remember from last week's video, she hasn't given birth to the baby yet. So tomorrow we're going to go in and at 7 a.m. and induce labor. So prayers are appreciated for that. Her name for prayer, my wife, her name for prayer would be Hava Bath Sarah. The baby is, they're telling us it's healthy, so it's just kind of taking its time in there. And naturally, if you're following me on Facebook, you'll get to see pictures. You may even get to see some video footage of the cute little bitty baby. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn the notifications for this channel on. If you have not come by my Facebook page yet, just search for an unorthodox Jew. You'll find me. I promise you. Like and or follow that, whatever the case may be, and interact with me a bit. Engage. Comment, share some stuff. Like a few posts. If you have questions, feel free to message me. I enjoy interacting with my audience. It helps me to know where people are at, and what they might be more interested in seeing. That being said, I'm done, man. I'm gonna rest up tonight, and because I gotta be at the hospital early. So, yeah, that's all I got. Like, subscribe, go find me on Facebook. Keep watching, because here within the next couple of days, there is going to be a post announcing the birth of my cute little baby. So, all right, I'm done. Until next time, shalom.